Okay, we are streaming and we're recording.
All right, thanks, Nelly. Let's see. My name is James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Cannabis Control Board. Today is June 26, 2023. It's 1:02 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. First things first, just wanted to add an executive session to review a social equity application. I'd like to add that between our executive director report and the vote on those recommendations. I don't know how long it'll take, maybe like 20 or 30 minutes. But again, the purpose of these is to hear some very personal and sensitive information about a candidate that's applying for social equity status. And get some legal advice from our attorneys as to whether or not they qualify. And then, we don't take any action in an executive session. We hear kind of the information, ask our questions, and then we come out and take a vote. Um, let's see. Wanted to remind everyone listening about something we started talking about back in April when we voted to close new outdoor and mixed applications. At that meeting back in April, we had mentioned that all applications had to be in by a date certain, and then they also had to be complete by a date certain. And again, the rationale for that is, your license is your legal protection against criminal prosecution. We can't have a situation like we had last year where people are growing with a pending application and thinking that they will be protected from enforcement. I just wanted to remind everyone that applications for new outdoor and mixed tiers must be complete by July 1st to be eligible for a license this year. And complete means that our staff has visited, that all the documents are in. You have your condition or your, what is it, certification of occupancy from fire safety. And I know that there's a number of people that don't have that stuff done that are pending, and I just want to remind everyone to kind of spend the next four days getting that stuff in, and work with your licensing agent to make sure that you have everything complete. We will review for completeness those applications after July 1st to make sure that they are complete, and we'll be dismissing the ones that are not complete by July 1st. When it comes to renewals, and yeah, I should just once again reiterate that was for new outdoor and mixed tier applicants that got in before the cutoff, not renewals. However, when it comes to renewals, we're kind of now seeing some of our first renewals come through. Our licensing system was set up to automatically notify people a few months ahead of their expiration date. The system had some kind of glitch in it that we're fixing, but those emails have not been going out automatically. We have been internally keeping a list of the people who are coming up for renewal and doing manual notifications. However, if you know your license is going to expire within a few months, please, and you haven't seen any indication of a renewal, you can reach out to the board, your licensing agent, if you haven't seen any correspondence come in about your renewal. And of course, we're gonna try our best not to let anyone's license lapse because of a glitch. Wanted to mention just that we did our hemp tour, just wrap that up, hemp derived products. It was very grateful to everyone who participated over the past 2 weeks. It was really great to see how hard this industry is working, how many products that are out there that are helping people. I've said it a few times that no one at the board likes to act through emergency rule, particularly when it impacts people's ability to access products that they rely on therapeutically. I think, the feedback that we received over the last 2 weeks and prior to that, since the issuance of that rule, has been very instructive for us and also reaffirming as to how we should proceed in the short and the long term. Wanted to mention about inventory tracking. We've launched the new process for all license types. We decided early on to move away from the more traditional platforms. We believe this decision was in the best long-term interest in Vermont, both from kind of a resource perspective and for our licensees. But we know that there's a learning curve for anything new. We are in the process of developing tutorial videos that are specific to each license type, and they'll explain how you interact and comply with the inventory tracking platform. It's my understanding that the first one of these videos will be up on our YouTube page by the end of next week. We've been getting a few emails about product registration. We know that our backlog has grown. We've had some staff turnover. We've had some people who have been out, and we've been onboarding new staff. And that's really the kind of main driver behind this backlog. We've made the decision to dedicate more staff to product registration. And so we are going to get through this backlog as expeditiously as possible. H270 and what is now Act 65 has become Act 65. I know Bryn walked through the major changes at our last meeting, and we have a summary document up on the homepage of our website. I would really encourage everyone in the industry to read the bill, or at least the summary, because there are things in there that will have a significant and immediate impact on your operation. Things like packaging for edibles, who needs to get a tobacco license from liquor control, the application of the 92% tobacco products tax, sometimes referred to as the vape tax. I wanted to mention, though, that there were some modest improvements to the medical program, including opening up the ability for the board to make some meaningful changes to the rules and regulations that govern the medical program. We're not going to do that in a vacuum. We're going to hold a series of meetings this summer and fall with interested stakeholders to help craft regulations, but also to make recommendations to the legislature about how we can improve the laws that govern the program. So I know Priya from our medical team and others have been doing some outreach. If you would like to participate in those meetings, please email us at ccb.med@vermont.gov. And we will, of course, keep our event calendar up to date when we have dates and times and links to those ready to go. So other than that, I think, we've got a long meeting today, and I think we should get right into the agenda. Julie and Kyle, have you had a chance to review the minutes from our regular board meeting in May and our special board meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Bryn, I think we'll start with you. This is the last meeting of our previously adopted regular meeting schedule, and so we need to approve a new one for the kind of remainder of the year.
Yes, that's right. And we have a slate of proposed dates for the remaining months of 2023. And I'm going to ask Nellie to help me with this list of dates. She will go through them one by one and you guys can vote on them.
Yes, I have a document that I'm just going to pull up on the screen really quick. Just give me 1 second. All right. You should hopefully all be able to see a list of dates right now. So they're all going to be Wednesdays at 1 p.m. We have July 19th, August 30th, September 27th, October 25th, November 29th, and December 20th.
Okay. Any well, I guess, is there a Is there a motion to approve these meetings? This regular meeting schedule?
I move to approve the meeting schedule as presented to us in this meeting.
I second.
Any discussion at all before we approve?
Nope.
No, looks good. Thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and Nellie, when you have a free moment, if that ever happens, could you just update our event calendar with those dates?
Can do.
All right, great. So I think, next on our agenda is to review amendments of the CCB administrative rules. I think, if history is a guide here, Gabe, this will fall to you to walk us through the changes and maybe some of the comments that motivated some of these changes. And then, I would suggest, just given how long this historically has taken, that my advice is that we hold questions, or I guess hold discussion until Gabe gets through everything, let him get through. And then as he's going through, make sure you kind of, Julie and Kyle, write down the sections you want to visit or have comments on. And then we go back kind of and systematically review those sections together.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's a good plan. All right, here we are. I'll try to free up some screen real estate so that everybody can see. If this renders too small on screens at home, please let us know and I can try to blow it up. So as the chair said, we've got quite a lot to get through. There are 3 rules under revision. They're rules 1, 2, and 4. Of the 3, rule 2 has the most substantial content to talk about. Rule 1 concerns licensing generally and has some pretty simple amendments. Rule 4 concerns enforcement.
So,
and really just Rule 4 is amended really just in respect to adding some specificity about the appeal procedure. So 1 and 4 should be quick to move through. 2 will take some time. As the chair suggested, it's probably easiest if I walk everybody through each change and explain each one in brief. And then if you have questions about any particular part, please note the section number. And at the end, we can go back through and clarify or dig into anything that folks might want to. So turning to the first amendment that you have in section 1, there was the strikeout of the definition of employee. That's really a technical amendment it was creating confusion about who can get an identification card. It's really meant to apply only to one specific subsection of the rule. So the thought is that striking that general definition will make it easier to read the rule. The change in definition of outdoor cultivation has been uncontroversial as far as I'm aware, and what you see here is the same as was proposed in the published rule proposal. That is to get into some detail about the limited use of artificial lighting just to prevent flowering. Again, not aware of any significant controversy there, so I'll move through that one quickly because I think most people involved have had an opportunity to familiarize themselves with it. The next amendments that you see in the definitions concern how the board defines who is a social equity applicant. That category of persons can receive certain benefits under the board's guidance and by statute. And really here, the board is clarifying what it means to be incarcerated. It sounds like off the cuff, you wouldn't
Maybe
think
hit the raise hand part.
I'm sorry.
I think that was just a open mic, hot mic.
Thanks. Sorry. So social equity, the changes to the definitions here are meant to clarify what it means to have a qualifying incarcerative sentence. And the board has clarified, and this is consistent with its past decisions when it's taken up the matter on a case-by-case basis, that incarceration means actual served incarcerative time as a result of a sentence, not pretrial detention, and incarceration that occurs in a jail or prison facility. So if one receives a sentence of home furlough, for example, that wouldn't constitute incarceration for the purposes of the rule. The board has gone on to elaborate a little bit upon what it means to be a social equity business applicant, and has clarified here that ownership has to be at least 51% by a social equity individual applicant. That is not a change in the law. The underlying federal code already contained that requirement, but few readers would know to dig into the underlying federal code from which this is adapted. And so saying it out loud is helpful to prevent confusion. Finally, the board has tried to offer more clarification, again, consistent with decisions already made and interpretations already given in cases concerning the topic, what it means to be from a community that has been disproportionately affected by cannabis prohibition. And there's a lot of ambiguity around that term community and what can constitute a community. And so the effort here is to be a little bit more clear about that. And I think fairly summarized as we're talking about born or imposed circumstance, not voluntary participation in club, advocacy organization, hobbyist group, following a particular style of music, et cetera. And so that's what the board is getting at here, I think. And so hopefully this will lend a little bit of clarity to applicants in deciding whether or not they're candidates for the social equity applicant status. The amendments that you see here to Rule 1.1.4, the first is technical. The second simply reflects the assignment of statutory authority over hemp-derived cannabinoids and potentially intoxicating hemp products to the board. And down in 1.3.1, you can see there's a strikeout of that narrow piece concerning mixed cultivators. Rephrasing of the discussion of what a tier 2 manufacturer can and can't do, clarifying that supercritical CO2 extraction as well as the other methods are not available at that tier. A little bit of clarification about changing tiers also has been in the rule since the original amendment proposal, and I'm not aware of any controversy related to it. In 1-4 or 1.4.5b, you can see a strikeout of the express escrow provision. In 1.4.9, you can see when we were talking earlier about why the definition of employee was struck from the general definition section, it's reinserted here where it is meant where it's meant for. Again, there to avoid confusion. You can see there also a part of the original proposal, and so far uncontroversial as far as I'm aware, a proposal to allow that a plan to pay applicable taxes on behalf of a medical patient who's duly registered may be one among the several kind of good deeds that a retailer may do as part of its positive impact plan. Uh, 1.7 is amended again, really to reflect the board's statutory authority over hemp-derived compounds. One 1.9e is amended again as it was in the original to strike the obligation of a plan to contribute $50,000 to the Cannabis Business Development Fund. That October 1 date has come and gone. Next amendment you find is 1.11.3. This is about the criminal convictions that would be presumptively disqualifying. The board in this case is just trying to articulate an objective standard by which those decisions will be made. And the standard that they've landed on is kind of the common sense one, I think also reflective of the statute, that what they're really testing is whether an applicant will pose a threat to the safety of the legal cannabis market or the general public. They're not sitting in moral judgment of whether somebody's taking responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. That's for the courts. So that's why you see that amendment. In 1.15.1B, just a technical amendment to avoid the appearance of any loophole associated with promises of notifications about expiring licenses, just affirming the principle that even if the licensee doesn't receive reminders that a license is expiring, the license still expires. It's the duty of the licensee to know the expiry date. In subsection E, this is a fairly kind of a technical and legal adjustment. We've added the qualifier "and complete" to the provision that if a licensee files a timely and complete renewal application without getting an action, without a decision from the board, the license continues in effect. This change was necessary really for two reasons. One, it matches the Administrative Procedure Act statute from which this rule is derived. So one actually has to complete the application. You couldn't file, the first page of it and just to hold the door open and say that the license is still active. So that's why you see that provision there. It changes nothing in substance because that already was the Administrative Procedure Act language. Technical rephrasing here that doesn't bear getting into. 1.17A1, here the effort is to add a sentence clarifying that there are certain de minimis changes that just don't call for the elaborate process of filing a renewal application. One still has to tell the board about those changes, but they don't necessarily provoke the full vote reapplication process. And then the waiver provisions for tier 1 cultivators. There's, I think, a long history here, but the general thrust is not hard to understand. It's that there's a significant policy interest in making sure that the marketplace is accessible to tier 1 cultivators, and so there was some leeway given there. I know there was a lot of discussion about that as these were developed. So there you are in Rule 1. Mr. Chair, do you want me to stop by rule, or would you rather I go through all three? And
You're muted, Pepper.
Yeah, why don't you go through all three, Gabe?
Okay. So we're into Rule 2, and as I kind of warned, this is the one with the most activity in it. We've received a lot of comments about aspects of this, some of them really helpful and provoked thought, and in some cases, in the months the rule has been pending, just changes in the marketplace have led to the suggestion that things be updated. So we'll try to walk you through what we've got here in an efficient way, and then we can dig into anything that I've glossed over at the end. Amendment to 2.1.2 again reflects the statutory assignment of responsibility to the board for the oversight of synthetic and hemp-derived cannabinoids. 2.1.3a, there's a new definition for adulterated. The term is used throughout the rule, especially in regard to when things become reportable. And so it was felt that it was important that it be clearly defined. The definition you have here is a sort of a merging of the federal definition in the FDCA, or used by the FDCA, and the definition of adulterated in the health and ag titles. So that's what we have here, but in general, it means something is wrong with the product, and especially that the strength, quality, purity, ingredients, or composition that are represented or expected aren't there, or that what is there is not consistent with the labeling. So the definition becomes important because it guides what triggers certain other events in case something is adulterated or deemed adulterated. As you, in the original proposal, clone was defined for the first time. We had some helpful feedback that said not all clones are growing in a water solution. They can't yet be root bound, but as we all know, clones are for sale in soil. So that correction is sort of there to reflect reality. The definition of distillate is added. The definition of full spectrum is added as originally proposed, but there is one change, which is that we had feedback concerning chlorophyll. And it's my understanding, I think it's been checked out, that there are products that all folks in the field would regard as full spectrum that don't have chlorophyll in them, really just because of its solubility or not in the same solvents that assist in making the other extracts. So that's kind of technical, but should hopefully avoid creating problems for folks making those products. Harvest lot is defined with the purpose really of letting that definition be applied to the testing requirements that are developed elsewhere in the rule. Isolate is defined. Outdoor cultivation is defined or redefined differently in order to account for the minimal use of lighting to prevent flowering. Exact same thing that we were talking about with in respect to the Rule 1 definitions. Process lot is defined. This is again because we're going to have a section on testing that uses the term, and so clarification about what the term means is helpful and necessary. And tincture is defined and in conformity with the with some of the H270 changes, the milligram cap is adjusted upward accordingly. The applicability of the rule, the section discussing the applicability of the rule is amended just to avoid technical and legal conflicts. Basically says anybody that's licensed pursuant to Rule 1. The insurance requirements in 2.2.2 are amended slightly. The board will publish guidance in consultation with the Department of Financial Regulation about what constitutes commercial reasonableness in various contexts. And so we wanted to clarify that. The escrow requirements are updated. There's a clarification in sub D that escrow has to be held by a third party. Money that's held by a person himself that can be put to any use isn't truly escrowed. Then a clarification that the escrow can only be dispersed in accordance with guidance issued by the board. Same idea. The point of escrow is that it can't be used for any purpose at any time. It has to be held aside for special contingencies. We're coming to some sort of the meatier amendments. This one, I think, bears particular attention from board members and participants. It has been a significant source of commentary because I think it would have some non-trivial effects on people and the products that would be available in the marketplace. So you can see there's an addition among the health, safety, and sanitation requirements are added first to sub B, which is that producers have recall procedures in place appropriate to ensure that adulterated or dangerous product can be called back from the point of cultivation or manufacturing through efficient communication with downstream trading partners. That just means sort of one would know who product was sold to and have a system in place, not unlike that in place from drug manufacturers and whatnot, whereby if a batch went out bad and needed to be called back, there'd be an efficient way to do it. It's really a record-keeping requirement. And that would be enforced at the point of inspection. I think inspectors would be able to ask for the recall plan or procedure. The sub E would prohibit the production of a cannabis product that includes a nutritional supplement, drug product, or additive that may provoke drug interaction, undermine shelf stability, or suggest curative effects. That does mean that such things as a gummy that merged melatonin and THC would not be permitted were this adopted in this form. Would additionally prohibit any products that contain meat or meat products and dairy products as defined in Title VI. There's a clear definition of when a dairy product ceases to be a dairy product. And so it's useful just to hitch onto that well understood definition. And also a prohibition on products requiring time and temperature control for safety. A provision that documentation may be required for pH and water activity if requested by the board. And the documentation be provided if there are any concerns about the biological concerns with product manufacturing process. These, I think, will provoke a lot of conversation later today. And the underlying problem with which most people are familiar is that because of the federal status of cannabis, the usual minders of the beat in food safety are not available to do their work. And so it becomes a question of sort of administrative feasibility and safety, but that's really a policy discussion that I'll leave for the end. The final safety addition to the safety requirements section is that if co-located in a residence or building outside of DFS jurisdiction, this really means a residence that's not a public building. The operation would have to have operating smoke detectors at least equal in number to operating security cameras, and would have to refrain from employing hydrocarbons in extraction. So for practical purposes, that means it would have to be a public building, meet the standards of a public building for those activities to go on, for hydrocarbon extraction to occur. And in residential grows, there would be enhanced smoke detection. That arises from concern, I think, both from our inspectors and from fire safety itself, that in-home cultivation presents certain risks of fire, and yet there's not really anybody there making sure that those are appropriately mitigated. The employment and training sections are largely left alone. There's a typographical correction to 2.2.7. We have the original proposal to amend the warning label. This also will require some discussion by the board after this summary. We're required to confer with the Department of Health in the development of these, and we're, we've kind of been partially successful in reaching out to the right folks there. And I think there may be some further discussion about whether we're where we want to be in terms of the ultimate amendments. And so we may want to just slow down and talk about what's going on with labeling. At that point, I know there's been a lot of concern because we've heard it in comments about not abruptly changing requirements in a way that requires people to throw out printed labels and whatnot. And so be assured that whatever happens, whether or not the board decides to make the adjustments to the labeling that are discussed here now, there will at least be a provision like what you see here in 2.2.10D that allows a run that allows folks with labels that have been rendered non-compliant to continue to use them and spend them down for a year. So that's what this section is all about. Simple amendment that was in the original proposal for 2.2.11, striking that limitation in sub E. Really just technical rephrasings. Here in 2.2.18G, narrow exception is made to allow co-location for mentorship and accelerator programs. 2.2.19A is the first section to kind of jump on that concrete definition of adulteration, to provide that all licensees shall make a prompt report to the board upon discovery of adulterated cannabis or cannabis product, regardless of cause or fault. And what is meant there really is that nobody's necessarily in trouble, won't necessarily provoke an enforcement action to make a report. The important thing is to make the report and let things flow from there. So that's why you see that, language where it is. Another technical change of importance to the kind of ag safety and occupational safety folks is that cannabis, once found to contain actionable levels of aspergillus, should be labeled that way, and the label needs to travel with the product so that other people and employees in the chain will be aware that the product could be hazardous to them, especially people who are very sensitive. So really a reminder here added in 2.2.21 about product licensing and registration. General provision asserting the board's authority to impose appropriate security requirements. And then a clarification that articulates decisions already made, sort of codifies decisions and interpretations already made about the one location rule. That's obviously an important feature of Vermont's licensing program. And this clarification addresses what happens when somebody has locations that are very close. How close is too close, or how separated is too separated at a point that would offend the one location rule. As you can see, the language proposed would clarify that this will be done based on spans, the familiar unit of property taxation. And I'm not aware of any significant commentary or controversy about that, but it is notable because of the underlying or the importance of the underlying one location rule. A requirement that packaging must include the cultivator's license number and process lot number. That's a kind of a common sense way to ensure supply chain integrity and call things back if they're problematic. Seeing mostly technical changes here, just instead of listing out some licensees, just the addition you see to 2.3.9 has been made in response to feedback that we really hadn't accounted in the sampling rules for competitions. Think of the Cannabis Cup, for example, where a panel of judges would be evaluating samples of product. This new section, sub C, would, parallels those provisions for vendors and employees and provides a rule for competition samples. As you can see, it's set at twice the employee limit. So instead of 4 grams per strand per flower, 8. And the rest of the proposal there speaks for itself. But that, again, was an effort to cover that contingency, which the old rules did not. The personal use rule 2.3.10, which kind of operationalizes section 4230E, allowing for personal use or allowing folks to grow for personal use, is amended to clarify that there has to be physical separation from the site of commercial operations and unambiguous labeling. And then a reminder that personal use product or flower stays out of the inventory tracking system. And the reasons for that are kind of self-explanatory. Very hard to, virtually impossible to enforce a distinction between one's commercial grow and personal grow unless they're physically separated. So the inspectors aren't guessing. Turning to 2.6.3, these are manufacturer labeling requirements. Provision similar to the one we just discussed, requiring that the manufacturer's license number and process lot number be printed. That's obviously for traceback purposes. And then suggestions to add labels to concentrates in vape cartridges, as you see here. And then an express prohibition. I say express because they're already prohibited by rule, but an express prohibition on disposable vape pens and other disposable vaping devices, and then a clarification of what that means right there. Section 2.6.4 concerns additives, and subsection A is amended for really technical reasons so as not to contradict other sections of the rule. An absolutist read of A would say that additives any additive that was generally regarded as safe by FDA, no matter what hazardous characteristics it might have in context, couldn't be prohibited. So obviously it makes sense to qualify that with the clause that you see. In sub B, the board clarifies that it will keep a schedule of approved and disapproved ingredients that'll be readily available to the public. Prior to this amendment, we were just talking about approved ingredients, and in terms of just practicality, it is sometimes a lot easier to list out disapproved compounds and substances. rather than approved ones. So that sort of commonsensical. Finally, a terpene limit. This is subsection C. So the total terpene content of a cannabis product intended for inhalation or vaporized formulation may not exceed 10% by weight. All terpenes added to a cannabis product must be naturally occurring in the cannabis plant. Any concentrated terpenes added to a cannabis product should be disclosed on the label. So that 10% rule, I think, follows rule in New Jersey. It's a little bit, pardon me, a little bit more permissive than the 5% rule that has been embraced by some other states, but it's meant to get at that, at the question of additives and what the consumer ought to be able to know about terpenes added from elsewhere. So just a technical change in 2.6.6 it doesn't bear getting into. Change in 2.8.2 that clarifies you don't have to keep your own front door locked for the customers to walk through. So it's
Well spotted.
that doesn't require too much explanation. Just an elaboration on the heading so that people know that the information about customer personal information is in that section as well. And we're into employee samples. This was, I think, part of the original proposal as well, but a provision that retailers may provide samples to an employee to determine whether to make the product available to sell, provided that such samples may not be consumed on any licensed premises. I know that I recall a thoughtful comment on that section that sort of said, well, nobody's actually giving samples so that they can decide whether or not to sell the product. They're really trying to educate the employees on the characteristics of the product. So that I just wanted to raise that because I recall it coming in, and that may be a minor issue, but one that the board might want to think about as you roll through this. And then limits on the aggregate calendar month samples available to an employee. Those will be 5 grams of concentrate or extract or 100 servings of edibles per employee, provided that the content of each has to be it doesn't exceed the 5 milligrams per serving, and fits within potency limits generally. And I think we had commentary, suggesting that that was too big and too little. So we've, I think, heard both things on that topic, but that's where things would be set right now as proposed. Requirement that samples be labeled and that they be tracked in inventory tracking. Now, here comes probably the most interesting of the amended sections. The board has kind of redone its testing section. We've removed a graphic flow chart that was a little bit confusing and replaced it with text. Because of the way the word processing program marks up these changes, it's going to be a lot easier for readers, I think, if I switch off the markup and just show you what the proposal is in black text. This graphic that may be familiar from the old rule would be gone. So let me do that now before we start talking about the content of the testing requirements. And here as well, we had some interesting and helpful commentary that's quite recent that I think we'll want to be sure to discuss deliberately. All right, there's a more reasonable version, and this doesn't show the markup, but shows what it would look like in final. So there's a preamble in 291 that clarifies that the board, kind of exists as a board, among other things, to be able to respond nimbly to new developments that may call for different kinds of testing. For example, if there's a novel pathogen that needs to be monitored, if there's a specific concern about a specific kind of contamination that wasn't covered before, the board would be able to use its guidance to steer laboratories and licensees into getting the appropriate tests done. We say here once, and I point this out now because it's taken out elsewhere where it was redundant, that any change to that guidance should presumptively take effect at least 90 days after its announcement and publication. We don't want to pull the rug out from under anybody. There are transition costs associated with decisions like that. And so that's going to apply to any change in the guidance that we're talking about. But the effort is to lay down the kind of broad tracks in the rule with the understanding that guidance could be used to adjust to changes in the world that move a little faster than the rule. So what we'd have here is that for general harvest lots, all cultivars would have to be individually tested for potency and pathogens, but up to 5 simultaneously submitted cultivars may be commingled by the laboratory, not by the submitting client or customer, but by the laboratory itself for pesticide testing. There was some discussion about whether pathogen testing should be part of the commingling, but the information that we are getting is that fails are common enough that that would be self-defeating and it wouldn't actually save anybody any money or offer any efficiency to businesses. So that's why you see what you do. Mechanically extracted or infused process lots, final potency must be tested, and harvest lot pesticide and pathogen COAs travel with the extract. For solvent extracted process lots, these 4 elements here, pesticides, residual solvents, potency, and heavy metals are to be tested. For manufactured process lots, COAs from all process lots in the manufacturing process must be associated with the manufacturing process lot. And for finished edible products, harvest lot or process lot COAs would have to travel with the product, and there would have to be testing of final product potency and potency consistency, another way of saying homogeneity. And in parentheses, we recognize that the guidance will have to be developed around the product types, just simply saying that you're going to have the same kind of homogeneity testing across the diversity of products out there would not be possible. So then we're into potency parameters that I think are familiar. I don't think there's anything significantly changing there. And similarly, the board has sort of reserved to guidance the action limits to be assigned to the metal contaminants. And I think that, yeah, that gets you to the end of the testing amendments. Those were significant because that whole graphic has been replaced with text now. So having been through that, I'll turn the markup back on so that because I think it helps more than it hurts in the rest in the other sections. So an express requirement that labs maintain certification. Some technical rephrasing. Section 2.15 is amended to reflect relocation of the confidentiality provisions to section 901A rather than 901. You'll see that a few other places. And 2.17 brings us to the next significantly controversial section of the rule. This is the addition to Rule 2 of what is now the active emergency rule on synthetic and hemp-derived cannabinoids. If everyone familiar with the emergency rule will be familiar with this text because it's cut and paste with renumbering, of course. The only real difference is just a clarification that taxation would be part of the kind of a common sense statement that goes along with being a registered, regulated cannabis product. So I know this has provoked and will provoke a great deal of discussion. And I know that we've explored options in other states, including the safe harbor approach taken in Colorado and a couple of other states. So I expect that the board will probably want to discuss those in some detail when the time comes. I assure you, we are mostly through it. The last one is Rule 4, so we kind of It's a stretch at this point, but
I don't know how you have that coat on going through all this. It's like 85 degrees in here. So
yeah,
take it off if
I
you need to.
I may take your invitation. To do that. Thank you. So here we are. It's for those of you lucky enough to be joining remotely. It's incredibly hot.
I don't know. Doesn't feel like it works.
So rule 4 is the compliance rule. Not much is changing here. As a matter of fact, I can tell you in 2 spots what's changing. There is addition of a procedural section concerning how appeals work, and there is an express prohibition of on altering COAs, which is already wrong and illegal and would cause trouble. But here you can see 4.5.2 among the long list of thou shalt nots in category 1. These are sort of the most serious of the categories of violation: altering, manipulating, or falsifying a COA. No need to explain why that ought to be prohibited. And then we get down to the administrative appeal process. This, I think, is welcome by some of us internally because it really offers a little bit of structure about how administrative appeals from final decisions of the board would work. You'll notice here that we've set a party to a contested case, which is implicit in the word party. But the point here is that what is appealable is important. Under the Administrative Procedure Act, a contested case is one in which the rights of an individual or company are to be adjudicated by the board after a hearing. So if there's been a hearing, the decision of the board can be appealed from. What can't be appealed from are kind of quotidian decisions of the board, like what kind of pens to buy or what color to paint the walls or something. This would really be, the clarification here is that this really applies only to the appeal right, and statute applies to final decisions of the board in contested cases, and the challenge may be brought by a party, then that almost always going to mean the respondent in this context. That's important because, for example, if you were a frustrated complainant whose complaint was not acted upon or something, you're not a party to the administrative proceeding, and you would not be able to appeal from it. So a long way of saying that the people affected are the people that can appeal, and that this applies to enforcement in the sense of administrative sanctions, suspensions, etc. And the text here follows and is adapted based upon very similar appeal procedures used by the Office of Professional Regulation and Occupational Professional Licensing, by the Medical Practice Board, etc. It also parallels provisions in the Administrative Procedure Act, which is the chapter of state law that governs how fair hearings in the at the administrative level are conducted generally. So a lot of what it's doing is bringing to ground general principles that are already the law under the Administrative Procedure Act, but that are a bit obscure for readers if not pointed out here. So the record on appeal is everything that went before the board. The transcript has to be provided if necessary, so that the appeals are on the record, meaning if an appeal occurs in this context, it's not a rehearing, it's not a de novo hearing. It's review of whether by a third party of whether the board erred in a significant way in one of enumerated number of ways in making its decision. So then the rule goes on to specify that there'll be an appellate pre-hearing conference useful for ordering things, making sure everybody's on the same page. There'll be a briefing schedule, which is the exchange of 2 15-page double-spaced briefs. And then there is a hearing and a decision. There is a narrow provision, and this is found in the parallel statutes as well, statutes and administrative rules concerning administrative appellate procedure, allowing that the appellate officer in really extraordinary circumstances could reopen the evidence to take additional evidence concerning irregularities in procedure that are not otherwise of record. So that wouldn't be to re-argue what was argued before, but rather to address something that for one reason or another didn't get in the record. So that's what you see there. And so as promised, that's everything with 4, mostly procedural and technical, but useful in terms of what the board's procedure will be in appeals. So I think that's a wrap. I can unplug and turn things back over to the sheriff.
Sure. Thank you for doing that, Gabe. I know I could use a little bit of a break. And you know, the air conditioning in this smaller conference room does work if you guys want to move in there.
We got it.
pretty-
We got it working
Okay.
now.
Okay. But Julie and Kyle, do you mind if we take just a 10-minute break quickly before we get into the substance of the rule?
No,
Okay. So why don't we come back at 2:10?
Sounds good.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. All right. Is everyone back?
Back.
All right.
Recording is still rolling, so we're good to just get started again.
Okay. See, it's 2:09 p.m. June 26th, 2023. We're just resuming a meeting. We took a quick break. So, thank you for reviewing those rules, Gabe. I know that over the past few months since they were published, we've also received a number of written comments. I'd also like to take a moment. I know in our agenda, we were going to take some oral comments one last time just about some of these provisions or about whatever is on people's minds. But could you just kind of describe a little bit about how we as a board are considering and what we do with those written and oral comments that we received throughout the process?
I'd be happy to, thanks. So the overarching theme of this process and procedure is that it's meant to maximize public participation and input so that nobody's taken by surprise and that there's full public notice of what the agency intends to do in terms of the rules that it is promulgating and intends to adopt. So that we take feedback a number of different ways. One is at the two public hearings that were held on the published rule proposal. Another is in writing. So for a period of months, which we can now, in fact, reopen, we accepted public comments at ccb.info@vermont.gov. And those comments go around to members as they're received so that they're all known. I know that the board in the past had done kind of an itemized look at each public comment. I did not plan that for today, in part because it's not required, and in part because simultaneously because it's not really required by the APA, and because we had so much to get into too. But I want to make sure that commenters know all of the public comments are compiled, they're put together. They have to be filed with the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, and our filing has to be accompanied by an explanation, which I'll prepare, of each substantive point made for and against the adoption of the rule, and then whether the agency has amended the rule in response to the comment or whether it's decided not to and why. So all of that is transparent to the legislative committee. The whole package of commentary goes to them. So if anybody's written to us at any point in this process and has made it clear that their comment is meant for public comment, it's in that collection. And atop that collection is a summary of the points made and the reasons why things were done or not done. Anyone who made public comment who would also like to share that commentary during public comment in this meeting is welcome to do so orally, of course. But I just want to make sure people knew the fate of the rule or the fate of their comments, that they're taken seriously, that they're seen, have been seen, and ultimately get right into the administrative record that's seen by everybody. To that end, I might suggest to you, Mr. Chair, that you consider deferring final approval of rules 1 and 2. And this is in keeping with what we were talking about the notice function of this process. We published what was intended months ago to be our final amendments to these two rules. And we've had a lot of activity since. We've learned new things since. We've had commentary that led us to change what we were proposing. We've added the emergency rule to Rule 2, which is something we didn't know we would be in the position to do when the rule was initially published in newspapers, et cetera. So I think it might, just in keeping with the idea that we want to maximize public participation, there's a lot to recommend deferring action on a final approval of 1 and 2 to your July meeting, in order that in order that folks that are participating now can know what I just said. Some of them were learning about that for the first time. That's the first notice they got of it. And we want to make sure they have time to comment on the amendments made in response to comment if that isn't too certain. So, you might want to consider that. I don't know if there's an obligation to hold it over another month, but so many changes have been made that there's a lot to recommend.
Thanks for that. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, especially if, in this meeting today, we received substantive public comment on things that people are seeing, maybe catching for the first time after you just reviewed it all, and based on changes that, like you said, like we made today. So I think I will suggest that we defer final action on approval of these rules, which would be sending them over to LCAR, I think is the next step in the process, until next month's meeting, which is in July 20th? July 19th. 19th. Okay. Great. Okay. I think what I would like to do before Julie, Kyle, and I start kind of opening up the rule and having our discussion is to open the floor to public comment. And again, the most helpful comments that we can get right now are about these rules. But of course, and we will have another public comment section, a more general one, at the end of this meeting, when we always do. But I think if people have comments that are specific to this rule, please raise your virtual hand if you join via the link. And then if we get through those, we'll move to the folks that join by phone.
We have Robert up first.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. One, I wanted to say that I appreciated you clarifying the rules about the conversion or the transition of packaging. I think that's very helpful. I know it's been a topic that we've been having internally and with other people, other growers, over the past couple months. So I'm glad to see there's not a cliff approaching there, but it's very helpful. But in the context of testing and how that integrates with the inventory tracking, which is already kind of assuming these rules are going to get adapted, it might be helpful to make sure that the similar types of transition concepts are kind of built into these rules as well. For instance, people already have plants in the ground. By the time, I'm not sure whether the rules will be adopted by the time that some of these tests need to be submitted. So I'm not sure whether that's the old rules or the new rules, or for indoor growers who have issues like this and who are live right now with doing certain things, they also have issues with transition about what to follow in terms of, uh, how they're keeping track of different process lots and harvest. Well, harvest lots is pretty straightforward, but the process lots, different process lots for biomass, for flour, and for a number of other things, and to make sure that everything lines up, both the inventory tracking, the testing that's going to be required, because a lot of indoor people are probably going to have a crop coming due midsummer, which will definitely be before these are adopted, and exactly what needs to happen there should be clear, and also is there a grandfathering clause for flour that's produced with those tests? Does it have to be retested or so forth and be broken down? Clarification on that. I'm not sure I saw that in the rules would be helpful. Hope that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert.
Bobby.
Hello, thanks for taking my comment. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bobby Berg. I'm one of the proprietors of Formulation Station, under which I produce my edible line, Houghton Hetty. I have some various serious concerns with these proposed rule changes, particularly 2.24, as you know, may imagine. Yeah, my concerns are innumerable. I'm not really sure where to start, so I apologize if this gets a little disconjointed. I do want to start with applauding the decision to defer for a few weeks. I think that's going to go a long way in, you know, restoring some public faith here. Um, Basically, if we want this industry to thrive, we really need to nurture small craft producers with niche and unique product offerings, not chop them off at the knees before they can even hit stride. These proposed changes would have an immense impact on innovative products. I myself make a couple. I know I have a bunch of peers that are also hoping to make, you know, great products. We've got Martha out there with Fog Valley Farm, who makes really wonderful frozen cookie dough. Her entire business would go belly up if this goes through. You know, sorry, let me pull up my notes. Basically, imagine telling the Alchemist or Hill Farmstead that they can't make IPAs because they should be refrigerated or should be consumed rather quickly. Vermont would not only lose millions in annual tax revenue, we would have a fraction of the credibility on the global beer stage that we do now. And as you know, we are global leaders, and we are situated to, you know, take up that same mantle with the edible industry. And that's not going to happen if we push through these changes. I understand that understaffing is one of the major issues pushing this, and I want to, you know, be understanding of that fact, but I don't think that it should lead to, you know, completely eliminating market segments and stifling innovation. I will provide some further written comment at some point, I'm sure. Uh, but yeah, I guess I'll finish off with saying you certainly won't transition any legacy operators if this goes through in the edible world. I know if this had been on the agenda initially, I'd still be out there trapping, throwing massive, you know, market parties and, you know, running it up with high dose, freshly baked goods. You know, we already have one of the most restrictive edible guidelines in the country, and it's really not going to encourage customers or operators from the other side of the tracks to, so to speak, to come on over. So thanks. Sorry to ramble. Have a good day.
Thanks, Bobby.
Amelia.
Hey guys. Yeah. So first of all, I just wanted to give you guys some acknowledgement and thanks for your work on H270. From my point of view, specifically the medical portions. I know that a lot of people might not know how hard it is to get medical legislation through, specifically progressive reform. But it is a pain in the butt, and there's a lot of compromise involved. And so I just wanted to thank you for your work there. A little confused and frustrated on how we got sampling for the sake of competition before we got sampling approved for registered medical patients, especially when we're looking at allowing double the employee allowance of flower to be given to a non-registered patient or a non-registered employee as a competition entry for consumption. Some of these judges aren't even from Vermont and are not registered in any system. But a registered patient still can't walk into a dispensary and walk out with a free pre-roll. I don't care about competitions. I don't. I think that it's cool if we have a structure in place for a competition to exist. But I do think that providing accessible, affordable / free product to patients should be as much of a priority as making sure competitions can happen. So moving forward, I really hope that there is some sort of priority in making sure that patients have free sampling. I understand that there is a structure in place where retailers can sell whatever product they want at whatever price that they set. Wholesalers and cultivators and manufacturers can do the same, but it is not the same as a patient being able to walk into a store and walk out with a free product that will make a significant difference in their day. So yeah, that's basically just my comment. I think that if we can write out a mechanism for free sampling in a competition setting, then we can also focus on writing out that same kind of mechanism for registered medical patients within a retail setting. Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia.
Dan.
Hey everyone. I don't have the best cell service, so I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but yeah, I just wanted to chime in on the proposed changes to the social equity. I know there's a lot of folks who were rejected for their social equity applications who felt that they, deserved to have that status. I noticed that you guys had changed the laws. I guess what I would like to say is anybody who was previously rejected, if you were personally harmed through cannabis prohibition, if you were arrested, if you've pled guilty to a cannabis crime and felt that you were incarcerated, I think we should all really speak up and make some public comment about this issue. There's just a lot of contradictory statements. The whole intention of social equity in cannabis is to give back to a community that was harmed by cannabis prohibition. And I feel these new regulations are, specified to basically prevent certain people from qualifying based on new kind of arbitrary guidelines. So I just wanted to let everyone know in the community, if you were rejected for social equity, it's a good time now to kind of speak out about what you feel you're entitled to for the harm that you've gone through, for being busted, convicted, or anything you've been through with cannabis prohibition. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Dave.
Thanks, Nellie. Can I yield to Martha and come back after her, please?
Martha,
Yeah, Martha's
Thanks,
there.
Dave. Hi, I'm Martha. I own Fog Valley Farm, and as Bobby said, I make frozen cookie doughs. My entire product line at the moment is frozen, and so the amendment to Rule 2.24 would be incredibly detrimental to my business. So I just want to not only speak to Bobby's comments that he made. I fully support everything he said. I'm not going to reiterate it because he said it very eloquently, but we are also food professionals. We know how to handle food in a safe manner. And also in the rules stated right now, we currently have to follow all health food safety guidelines put out by the Department of Health. And we all do that in our kitchens. And they're not super complicated to regulate and inspect. I feel I could go into a kitchen and inspect kitchens. It's really not that complicated. There are guidelines and checklists out there for inspectors. And I also, again, we're food safety professionals. I just finished completing a food safety course in order to keep my kitchen safe. That's something I felt was important to me to fully understand the guidelines. And so I just want to make it known to the board that we are not just random people out here mixing up whatever in our kitchens. We know how to handle food and how to handle them safely. And I think the guidelines are in place to keep food safe and protect consumers. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Martha.
Dave.
Thanks. You never want to step on your client's toes. Martha said it really well. One, I want to ask that the changes that you showed on the screen, if those could be made available as a document, Gabe, if you can email that to me, that would be fine. Or if you could get it up on the web, that would be fine as well.
I have to think we'll publish them on the web so that everybody can see them.
Thank you. I'm gonna add on Rule 2.2.4, which is something that some of us in the industry found out about through the rumor mill, but I believe this is the first time it's was shown publicly. There's a lot of problem there. I get the meat and dairy one is your hands are tied there. There's some some federal state law intertwining there that makes dairy a big no-no, meat a big no-no. Fine, you can't control it. And this time and temperature control, as well as the section on supplements, as you've heard, this is a real blow to the industry if this goes through. There are a lot of great products just starting to come onto the market, being put together by folks with experience in the sort of herbalism world. that you are going to be shutting out. And I don't really see why. You know, look, I'm not a fan of mixing THC with melatonin, or THC and CBN and melatonin, you know, but there's nothing particularly dangerous about it. And, you know, sleep gummies are sleep gummies. And, you know, just because melatonin is marketed as a sleep aid doesn't change the fact that, you know, CBN's a sleep aid too. And so, you know, rather than banning these products, you have rules on labeling and making statements about curative effects that you can just continue to enforce. You don't need to ban ingredients that are safe for consumption because some other products containing those ingredients that don't contain cannabis may make claims as to curative effects. That doesn't help the industry, and it doesn't help consumers. With time and temp control, there's a lot of products that, you know, there's time. I mean, like all the gummies have expiration dates. This is just, retailers have refrigerators. We can log the temperatures of those refrigerators pursuant to a rule that you prescribe, telling us how often and what temperatures. There are better ways of doing this than to shut out entire segments of this industry. And so I'll leave it at that. Very disappointed also just in the manner in which this was proposed. The manner in which this was proposed sort of on the fly, late, and not well publicly disclosed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Next we have Grow. Grow by MJ Cultivators, I think.
Yep, that's me, Marie. I'm just kind of curious if there is a way, first of all, Dave, if you can get that info up on, or not Dave, I'm sorry. As David mentioned, if we could get that info up online, that would be awesome because I couldn't get a good view of that myself. What I do have is a question that I will put as a comment, I guess. I would like to know how we can go about finding out who our licensing agent is specifically to deal with. I'm a manufacturing tier 2 right now. I am considering switching my license type, and I don't see anything as to how to go about doing that. And I would like to talk to somebody directly, you know, in the privacy of a conversation, you know, not here on this forum, but to discuss that more, you know, in depth. So that's just something I don't know if somebody could make a point of reaching out to me, letting me know how to find out who to contact. That'd be great. I don't know if it goes by a license type or geographical location. So that's it. Thank you.
Tito.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So I just want to say I agree with Bobby and Amelia and Dave, and I really hope we can keep figuring out how things can get done and not eliminating whole categories of products, and to not take the fun out of Vermont's potential. I mean, we could really be the #1 global destination for cannabis, but not if we keep taking the fun out of it. So that's all. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tito.
Jeffrey.
Good afternoon, board. Hope everyone's having a good day. Just a couple quick things. I want to express gratitude to the agency for deciding to postpone their final vote on the proposed rules changes. I thought that was an excellent move. Thank you. Affording the industry another month for this step in the process, recognizing there's multiple steps still, I think was vital. So good move. Lastly, I just want to express support for 224. I would just like to impart on the board. VGA has confidence that you will be able to find a solution here. Oregon State allows for temperature sensitive products. Washington State allows for temperature sensitive products. California has ice cream, okay? New York State, with their rules that are rolling out, they allow for this as well. There is no reason why Vermont, home of Ben and Jerry's, everybody, right, cannot figure this out as well. We have confidence that this agency can. Clearly, it is what the industry is asking you to do. That's it. I just want to say, I just want to recognize that, James, you're down at Canada. Have an excellent time. The National Craft Cannabis Coalition is down there. Vermont Growers Association is a part of that organization, and we hope some productive conversations ensue. Everyone, have a good day.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Anyone else who joined via phone, feel free to raise your virtual hand if you'd like to make a public comment. If you join via phone, you can hit *6 to unmute yourself if you'd like to make a comment. And we'll just jump over to, what is it, Bernardo?
Yep, Bernardo.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you guys for H270. I know it's some steps forward. The ag insertion there had some direct impacts on my licensing. And I appreciate you considering and putting forward that language. Today, I just want to bring up, I'm just curious about the difference in the variances between flower and manufactured vaping products, and why it's 10% for oil but 20% for flower. I feel like I'm more likely to find like a purple unicorn than a 36% flower strain, but a 72% oil is, it's like, it's prohibitive still, right? It's if the board has the ability to create a variance and has the ability to create that discrepancy themselves, I just, would like you to consider increasing that variance from 10% to 20% for oil as well. A 30% cap on THC is more like an 85 or 90% cap on oil, not a 60%. So it's just, I know the board's trying, and this is going to be a good time moving forward to try and work on the governor and trying to change the THC caps or eliminate them. But if the board does have the ability to consider that and make that change, I just want to make that recommendation, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernardo.
Scott.
Hi, yeah, I was just hoping that maybe just quickly you could repeat the date in August that you have your meeting and when the submission time is.
We'll get those dates up on the website after the meeting is over for the rest of 2023.
Okay, thank you.
It was July 19th is when we postpone action on these amendments, though, right? July 19th.
Yes.
Yep.
We do have a phone that is unmuted, so phone number ending in hang on one second, sorry, 9192. You are unmuted.
Hi, this is Chelsea from Moonrise Botanicals and Moonrise Alchemy. So I just wanted to comment on what was stated about including other herbal additions to cannabis products. So I know melatonin was specifically mentioned. I'm curious if this applies to other herbs in general and how to get more information about that, because I'm about to enter the market and this is very important to me in terms of what I'm trying to do, to understand, like, if any other herb is being used, it could be claimed to have a curative effect potentially, and how to just delineate between the substances. And yeah, just to get a clear understanding on that feels really important.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. We will discuss that in our comments or when we review the substance of the rule. Anyone else who joined via phone or via link? We will have one more public comment period after this for general comments, but anyone else who would like to make a comment about these proposed rule amendments before the board starts discussing them?
I'm not seeing anybody, Pepper.
Okay. Then I'll close the public comment window. Thanks for all those comments. And I think I was taking some notes while Gabe was going through. And I think we should just start with rule one at the beginning, because I think we'll address a lot of the comments that were just made about particularly rule 2.2.4, as well as some of the other ones. So Gabe, I don't know if it's worth pulling up the rule again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. As I put it up, I should emphasize, we're going to reopen the opportunity to file written comments. In fact, we never really closed it. But if folks could have comments in by, say, July 10, we'd be able to guarantee those comments got in the package. So, and those can be sent to ccb.info@vermont.gov. We'll post that online as well. See if I can get your the two.
Can we start with rule one? Is that right?
Of course.
Yeah.
So let me know the section. I'd be happy to jump you to it.
My first comment was around 1.1.4. I don't know if anyone had anything before that.
Nope.
Nope.
So just this, I know we kind of said the applicability of this rule, and just correct me if I'm wrong. I know we changed it to persons who engage in transfer sale of hemp-derived products that contain more than 1.5 milligrams of THC per serving. I guess my comment or my question is, A, do we have to say Delta 9 THC? And then B, do we have to include the 1:20 ratio?
I had a similar concern to yours about whether or not B should be a little bit more generic and make sure that, I think the emergency rule say, or what used to be the emergency rule can speak to that, but we ought to be clear that the 1.5 is not the limit of the board's jurisdiction.
Okay. And then the ratio, like I know that, I mean, it's my intention and that we don't get into the kind of realm of adding all of our requirements to what truly are what we consider non-intoxicating products. I think the role of the board is over intoxicating products. And so I wonder if we need to add kind of the rest of the emergency rule into this section about the applicability of these rules.
I guess, help me procedurally, what, you mean as a reference, that we would reference the 2.17 or that we would add the whole piece here?
Well, I'm just
Because the
saying,
rest of
like,
the emergency rule is in 2.17, right?
well, I mean, so let me just, so this is pertaining to the applicability of the entirety of rule one, right? This 1.1.4.
That's accurate. Yeah.
And so if someone is producing a hemp-derived product that's full spectrum, that's 1:20, does that mean that they have to comply with all of rule one?
Only if in my understanding, only if rule one would require that they be licensed. So I don't think the broadened applicability of the rule doesn't change anything in my understanding about who out there in the world is obligated to have a license from the board before engaging in a business, if that makes any sense.
Okay. It does make sense. I just wanted it to be clear in my mind that, if I use, hemp to make a full spectrum tincture that's, we consider non-intoxicating, that these rules don't require licensure with the board.
That would be my understanding as well. The only time that somebody they would only people making intoxicating products that they would want to market through the adult use system would be required to obtain a license, but that was sort of the requirement.
Okay. And is that the feeling of Julie and Kyle? Do you feel the same way about just people that are making full spectrum tinctures using hemp as their source material that meet the 1-to-20 ratio?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. My next comment was on 1.4.5. Does anyone have anything before that?
Nope.
Nope.
So, I've been talking for a while now about just removing the cessation of operations escrow. And okay, I guess, I guess I was looking at it earlier. So this does that. This just removes the requirement for cessation of operation escrow accounts.
Yes.
Okay, great. I was following along on a different version, I guess. Okay, great. Next on my list is, and maybe this is, if you could just go to 1.9 also, unless there's
I have something for 1.4.9, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Okay.
Just two things that we've received public comment on that we could consider. I'm not necessarily advocating or not for one of these, but two things that came up that could go here. One is we received comment about the signing of a labor peace agreement being one of these options in 2.4.9. And then the other is, and we received multiple comments from the Vermont Medical Society on this, is a plan to make or sell low THC products is another item that could go here if that's something we would like to consider.
I guess let me
And
take
again,
the
both
second
of those
one.
are optional. They would be
Yeah, let me
optional.
take this. Let me take the second one first, because anytime you add to this, it means that like it's easier to satisfy, or there's more options for people, which might not be a bad thing, but it kind of like will move people away from the things that we thought were important the first go around. I mean, I don't like, so it would be a plan to create low THC products,
Yeah, make and sell.
make and sell,
Or
and do they?
offer access to. So in my mind, if you're a manufacturer, that means making them, or if you're a cultivator, it means growing low THC cannabis. And if you're a retailer, that means selling them.
Okay, and do they have a definition of what low THC means?
They do. It was based on milligram. Well, so their suggestion came from Connecticut, and I think it's 1.5 to 2 milligrams is what they consider low THC in Connecticut. I agree with you that the more we add to this, the more sort of watered down it potentially becomes. But it also, some of the options here are like, for example, making a plan to pay livable wage. So once somebody does that, they've checked off the list. If we want to provide more options for people to access additional options in the future, that might be one reason to add to it. Again, throwing it out there is something that we heard.
Okay. I I don't know. Like the way I feel about it is kind of like, that's trying to have kind of a heavy hand in just market forces. Like if someone has a plan to sell these things and they just are not viable on the market, you know, or alternatively, if it turns out that Vermonters really want low THC products, it's kind of like, well, the market will supply them. They'll find, I don't know if we want to dilute this section by trying to just dictate from our chairs in Montpelier what the market wants. That's
So
just my feeling on that.
I'm raising it because for an effort of transparency, right? So well, I don't think we have to decide today.
Okay.
So this is taking language from Connecticut, and they say, remind me, best,
It's like your level
make your best attempt to sell low. It just
provide
sounds
access to low THC, or I think their language goes on to say, or high CBD products.
Okay.
I don't really have a.
I raise it today for consideration. That's all.
I feel like
Okay.
that's kind of hard to evaluate as far as a plan for positive impact criteria, just because that's. How can we determine that somebody gave it their best attempt to sell these?
Well, that's true of a lot of these, to be honest.
Fair enough.
And what was the other one?
Signing a labor peace agreement.
And can you remind me what that is?
It's essentially a organization signs an agreement that says they will take a neutral approach to union organization. That will neither, promote it or prevent it.
And we don't have that as, I mean, I thought it was already illegal to interrupt union negotiations.
I think what you're thinking of is more like union busting, and that's true. I think that there are folks who believe that the signing of a labor peace agreement makes that employer more labor friendly and neutral towards, any union activity that might occur.
Okay.
There be any need to talk to the Department of Labor about that?
I would guess they don't want to talk. No, I don't think the Department of Labor would want to. I'm assuming the Department of Labor would not want to weigh. It's not something that they would weigh in on, I don't think. I mean, I think an operator would want to talk to their counsel,
right,
if they have counsel before doing that, and what all the implications of that might be. But again, raising it for consideration only.
Okay. I think I just would want to just dig into that a little bit more before we decide to add that in.
Right.
Agreed.
All right. Anything before 1.9?
Not for me.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, again, I was just looking at, I think, an earlier version, so I think that's fine with me. I was looking at sub E there. That was all I had for Rule 1. Is there anything anyone wants to, any other parts of Rule 1?
No, I think the crux of conversation will occur in Rule 2. At least for me.
I think we're good.
Okay. So my first was on 2.2.4. Is there anything before that?
Not for me.
Nope.
So Gabe, can you remind me, I think we heard a couple comments that some of this was new, that most people are seeing it kind of late in the game. And I know you weren't our general counsel when this when this original amendment was sent to ICAR, approved and sent to ICAR, but do you have, or maybe Bryn, have a sense of kind of a response to that? As in, like,
Yeah.
when did some of this show up? And is it new? Did people have appropriate ability to comment?
Thank you. I guess there's always that paradox where if you receive information and comment and then make a change in response to that, as one would probably hope you would, you've then created something new that other people might not have notice of. And that is one of the reasons I think it'd be really wise to kick this over for a month so that people can digest and comment on things they might not have seen to this point. The original filing with the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules did contain a blanket prohibition on meat and dairy. And then we received feedback from some of our stakeholders with experience in food safety regulation to the effect that, you know, a little bit more nuance might be called for, especially with regard to water activity and pH, significant factors used in that world to determine whether something is kind of shelf stable and safe. Similarly, the idea that the definition of dairy product already exists and ought to be embraced was a late add that came in late. Similarly, the recommendation that refrigerated products or temperature controlled products really aren't within our ability to oversee was really an expansion of that idea about meat and dairy. So it is accurate that this section has changed significantly. There was, however, an original plan published to restrict meat and dairy. It's really just a question of the vehicles by weight and degree of nuance in which you might want to do it. But I think folks saying a lot of this is new have a point, and that's why it makes a lot of sense to open comment on it and kick it to next month to make sure that folks who are seeing this new have some time.
Okay. And how do Julie and Kyle, how do we feel about meat and dairy? I mean, I've got my opinion about it, which I'm happy to start with.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, I think that there's a difference between high risk and low risk foods. I'm not sure if there's a little bit of perhaps confusion as to what we're trying to do here, and what would be considered a high risk food and what would be considered a low risk food. I think there's some that are easy to figure out what we're trying to accomplish, and others, you know, would fall into that low risk category. But why don't you start, Pepper?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so I think getting kind of having a prohibition on these types of potentially hazardous foods, which, you know, have strict temperature controls and you know, we have all these kind of very specific rules about homogenization and you know, safe handling. You know, I know that some commenters pointed us to other states that allow ice creams and raw cookie dough and things like that. I've got some real concerns about those products, given that we do not have the support of kind of our traditional state agencies that inspect commercial kitchens. You know, I am down here at Canra, and we just got a little bit of an overview of some of the other states and the size of their compliance staff. You know, I was just Oklahoma grew to 170 people, you know, like, you know, that's a relatively new board. You know, these agencies are in the realm of hundreds of people. We, of course, have, I think, 8 compliance agents that have to be experts in every aspect of the supply chain. And I just don't think that we, in kind of with less than 1 year under our belts of adult use sales, are ready to kind of just, you know, go down the path of allowing every type of product that people can come up with. You know, our manufacturing tiers are tailored towards the types of extraction methods that people can use. They're not tailored towards the types of products that people can create and the kind of accompanying regulations that should go along with the creation of those products. And I think maybe that's a direction that we could move in. But I don't feel comfortable, short, you know, absent where we stand today, that we can ensure that every single one of our manufacturing facilities is capable of meeting the very rigorous regulations that the Department of Health has with respect to, proper storage, handling, temperature controls, and all the other issues that kind of commercial kitchens deal with. We do have a very expert, veteran from the Department of Health, former public health inspection manager on our staff. And I think that we can get there, especially with the support potentially across training from the Department of Health. But I think that with respect to, meat and dairy, and we should say that this is kind of like uncooked meat, uncooked dairy products, that I feel comfortable with that portion of 2.2.4.
Yeah, I mean, just very generally, I mean, I generally agree. I think I'm a little concerned that people put or perceive to put food safety in the back seat in the name of creativity. I think we even heard from a commentator that food safety expertise is really not that big of a deal. It's not that hard. It's easy to do. And I think that that undermines, a lot of how food safety experts keep us safe from foodborne illnesses, not just in the cannabis space, but across, where and how we purchase food products. It's important to remember that, a lot of these products would need sell-by dates that would be evaluated by a food safety expert. Non-cannabis food manufacturers are required to have products evaluated by third-party food processing authorities. Those are often across state lines. We can't ship products across state lines. So, we don't have the bandwidth to be FDA here in the Department of Health. And I know that frustrates some people. It's not our intent to stifle creativity, but one major foodborne illness outbreak from the cannabis space reflects poorly on all of us. I think there's a lot of good actors that we've heard from today that would take every step, but checklists and guidelines are checklists and guidelines. Nothing more, nothing less. And it only takes one bad actor. And ice cream and take and bake stuff arguably could be, appealing to children. I think that's a forgotten separate issue. And a lot of this, I mean, I know that's a general statement that I just made, and I'm not trying to rile people back up with that statement. But I think, given the support and how we're off on an island, I don't see it as a unwise step to kind of take this approach now, considering, the support that we need in order to feel comfortable here.
Agreed. So this has been a concern of mine for a while. This is what my formal, or partially what my formal education is in. And the meat and dairy products are definitely a concern. I think I need to think more about the pH and water activity and what that actually looks like. But, the safe handling of food products, to your point, it can be incredibly dangerous. And there are checklists and there are guidelines, but there's someone that is part of a state agency that is a third party that oversees making sure that those checklists and guidelines are followed, and we don't have the resources to do that.
Yeah, when we talk about, high-risk products, we're talking about obviously ice cream, pie cakes that require refrigeration, cheesecakes, butter, cheese, yogurt. I think it's important to point out that what we're not talking about is breads, cookies, muffins, cakes, cooked fruit pies, fruit jam and jellies, confections and sweets, dry herbs, herb mixtures, dip and soup mixes, popcorn, granola, chocolate covered pretzels, marshmallows, graham crackers, cereal bars. I don't want folks to get the wrong, and that list is not exhaustive. I think, and even, with additional processing, salad dressings, beverages like kombucha, tea, and apple cider, barbecue sauces, hot sauces, ketchups, mustards, those could all find a path into the marketplace. And these lists are not exhaustive, but I want folks to understand, that this isn't an existential threat on the entire edible market. It's just high risk ones where we don't have the expertise to, in agency to really feel comfortable putting our stamp of approval on these products.
And it's not things that are refrigerated for particular taste.
Sure.
Right. So
like some chocolate.
But like to the point about beer, not all beers, they don't have to necessarily be refrigerated.
Right.
I had one question about the meat and dairy that I think is probably important to talk about. Does dairy include plant-based milk? If it's a substitute for milk?
I
So
would have to,
plant-based ice cream?
because we've gone and attached ourselves to the Title VI definition, I suspect not. However, because of the parameters around water activity and
Yep.
pH, it's probable that those would be problematic anyway.
Okay.
Because at room temperature flora could
Yep.
proliferate and
Yep.
proliferate. And
Thank you.
And then I guess the other piece of this is about the nutritional supplement drug product additive. I mean, what we're saying is that this is an area where there's just so little science here. Like, we don't know what these interactions are going to be. It's tough for us to kind of put a stamp of approval that something is safe. If we just don't, we just can't say that it's safe. Is that kind of the rationale here? And it seems like a decent rationale to me.
it is, according to my understanding from the commentary I've received from the people that I've spoken with in trying to develop this, the concerns are several. One is that these products in particular are provocative of federal intervention in a way that others aren't. Another is the appearance of the state through the registration system, the appearance that the state has evaluated these things for safety by dint of registering them. I think there's inferences made by consumers that the state does certain things before it endorses for sale a particular product, and we don't have the capacity to evaluate potential drug interactions of cannabis products and other drugs and supplements. And so, although anybody can take with one hand the supplement that was found, take with the other hand the cannabis product, it's something different for the government to say this is endorsed as a combination product. And also a lot of concern that really the one and only reason that those products would be combined would be to imply a curative effect. And there's a statutory prohibition on exactly that suggestion as a marketing matter. So for all those reasons, there's a lot of downside risk to that particular kind of product, I think, all the way from provoking unwanted federal intervention to simple consumer. The degree of safety and analysis that has gone into the product.
I think FDA has said as much, correct?
Yes, they have. To a degree, yes, they have.
Okay. And then how about subsection M? I mean, I like where this is headed. I personally don't want to see, just given the risks of being a tier 3 manufacturer, I don't think and frankly, maybe this is my own limitation. I did not expect any tier 3 manufacturer to be in a building that was not subject to the commercial building codes. I mean, we're talking about highly explosive solvents that people are allowed to use, and you think about the building codes around. I mean, you go to any tier 3 manufacturer, you see how in depth their operations are. It never dawned on me that we would see a tier 3 manufacturer at a homestead, a non-public building. And I just want to make sure that this goes the full gamut of saying that, all of the kind of commercial building codes that would be applicable to a tier 3 manufacturer in a commercial building would be applicable to one that's based out of a home.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
You want to do a hydrocarbon extraction in your garage? I want to see a fire safety stamp of approval there.
Yeah, I agree. One of the reasons why we talked about the tier 1 manufacturing was because we assumed that is the type of manufacturer that would be in someone's home, not a tier 3. I agree.
So I don't know, like, does Gabe, I don't know if this gets there, and I don't want to put, if we would just want to say like a tier 3 manufacturer can't be home based, that's fine. What I don't want to say is, you need a certificate of occupancy from fire safety in order to be a tier 3 manufacturer out of your home, because they're just not going to go to someone's home. They don't have the jurisdiction. So that's just like, I just feel like, do you think this does it, or do you think we should just be more explicit?
We could be more explicit in Rule 1 and just say in the section concerning tier 3 manufacturers and what that license does, no hydrocarbon extraction. That's very much possible, if you think this is too wishy-washy.
Are we certain that that's correct? Well, I guess it's because there are other businesses that operate out of folks' homes. Those are all open to the public though, typically, right? There are a section of someone's home that is open to the public.
If it, there are,
Hairdresser or a
Yeah.
like snowflake shop, like those places.
if somebody were to do that, so open the place up for the general public to come and go.
Right.
Or if somebody were to employ more than 2 people, they become, by dint of doing that, a public building under DFS jurisdiction. So all of those, the home hair cutter,
Yep.
DFS does have and can assert jurisdiction over that. Where everybody's nervous, the places where they can't, because it's not open to the general public. So, Mr. Chair, I could make a note to consider making a corresponding amendment to Title 1 or to section or Rule 1, I should say, if you think that might be more clear.
I think you should, and have that one be the one that's published, because we can always take it out if we get the comments that this is a bad, there's other ways to do it, but I'd rather people have the ability to see it, for what we publish between now and July 19th. Anything else on 2.2.4?
No, I mean, I get how in the Secretary of State filing is like a moment in time, and we have, based on commentary from a host of different folks, have worked to make that more specific. I get how that makes it sound or feel to folks like this kind of caught them off guard, and I think, providing another until July 10th, I think is what you said, Gabe, an opportunity to come and provide us, quantitative information. I want to be clear that, we understand where people want to go, but we need to see, the reasoning to go certain places. Get us that feedback, and we'll look to reconsider that. I know that this is a big part of the rule update, so I just wanted to say, get us that information, and we'll look to see how the dynamics have changed at the end of July.
Okay. Can we go to, unless someone has something beforehand, 2.2.10? So, on the health warning, really, my concerns around changing the health warning are purely procedural, I should say, which really are, I should clarify that, I don't think that there's any science to suggest that one kind of series of statements about the health impacts of cannabis is significantly better or worse with respect to kind of public health outcomes than any other kind of grouping of statements around this. But I am particularly concerned about just how many times it says in law that we were required to collaborate with the Department of Health on this warning. And I know that at least the last time I asked, they have not had an opportunity to provide feedback on this warning, or they've had the opportunity. They have not provided feedback on this warning.
May I interrupt, Mr. Chair? I mean, we have a whole almost month to continue to collaborate with the Department of Health now that we have kicked this to our next meeting. There is one edit here that was unintentional, and that the individuals of 21 years of age was taken out. That was unintentional, so we'll need to add that. Probably should be first. But we have the opportunity to continue to attempt to collaborate between now and the time that we actually would vote on this. So I just wanted to remind you of that and throw that out there as we had this conversation.
Okay. And I would say just also that I think, Julie, if I'm correct, that the motivation behind this change is to try and adopt a more standard label as kind of using the ASTM guidance.
Correct. So the ASTM has a collaboration with CANRA, as you know, and this is essentially taken from their final standards.
Okay. So I looked at that document, and even I agree that this moves in that direction, but there's still things in there in their guidance that are not in this. And I really don't want to be in a position of changing this again. Because there's, as we heard, there's a transition cost, and then there's a runway where we allow when there's 2 warning labels out there. And I don't want to get to the position where there might be 3 or 4. And so, there's a few things in the ASTM guidance that I don't see in here, and I'm wondering if they needed to be added in here.
As we continue to collaborate with the VDH, we can certainly have that conversation with them.
Okay.
I know one that stuck out to me was a terpene warning. We don't require terpene testing, so that, for example, would not apply to the state of Vermont.
Well, the 2 that I saw in particular, which they said, they're pretty specific about, and I know that they have kind of in their preamble that you need to have this or something substantially similar. But they say that you're supposed to say consume at your own risk, which I think, whether we agree with that or not, is in the ASTM standard. And then also do not consume during pregnancy or while breastfeeding. And I know that we have something that there may be harmful, especially if, but it's not an explicit statement saying do not do these things. And again, I don't really care about what the warning says in particular. I just think that if the goal is to move to an ASTM standard, we should just do the full ASTM standard so that we don't have to change it again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Between the time that we originally published this and now, they have published their final standard. So the first one we had access to as a draft through CANRA. They have published the final standard since then with exactly those types of tweaks. So instead of saying, I've forgotten what the original phrasing was, it said consume at your own risk instead of, something else. There were wording changes. But yeah, I couldn't agree more with just adopting that standard makes the most sense. Other states are looking at that. In some places, the voluntary standard, in some places they're considering adopting it via rule. The more states that come online, the more standards are going to be necessary for this type of thing.
And then, is there any, and this kind of takes things in a slightly different direction. Is there any utility in us just using wholesale one of our neighboring states, or just trying to work with our kind of fellow regulators in New England to just create one standard New England label, just because, it seems to me like descheduling or rescheduling cannabis is a 10-year process. However, we may see interstate commerce much more quickly. And it seems to me like like having a unique label, might be an impediment to interstate commerce.
So I don't know about New England. I think labels are more about the consumer than they are about the business, quite frankly. So I think what we would be looking for is uniformity among many states, because the consumer may travel from, I don't know, South Carolina, South Dakota, California to Vermont. I think that's why CANRA is collaborating with the ASTM, but we can certainly look at either of those options.
I just mean, like, I think the path of least resistance for interstate commerce, if a judge all of a sudden, a federal judge or someone just decides, hey, listen, the dormant commerce clause applies to this, but we should allow it for states that are abutting, that are legal states, that we would want to make sure that we have some sort of standard for at least New York and Massachusetts, for kind of our
So if I recall, I think New York is looking at at least the symbol. I don't recall if they're looking at the same warning. Have to go look. But again, I think that the label is more about the consumer than the product moving from state to state. So if you go across the country, maybe products can't go across the country, but individuals certainly can, and they will purchase products in different states. And therefore the warning being similar across states is why you would want that uniformity.
So I just want to be clear.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Trevor.
No. I mean, yeah.
I just want to be clear on where we are, because this is more from a process conversation and a collaborative or consulting or whatever the language is in 164, and we have not received anything from the health department with repeated from many different people in our office, asking to get their eyes on this, to hey, should we wait to do this at all until we talk to other states, whether it's in our region or things kind of move in a certain direction with many different states, whether it's in New England or not. So I just want to know, I just want to make sure I'm keeping track of where we are and what we're attempting to convey to each other here, because I'm getting a little lost.
Right. And to that point, I think procedurally, this has been sitting out there since November. So I just want to be conscious of the fact that this is what we warned the public 6-8 months ago, without any other the only comment we've received on it really is, please give us a run out for this label, right? Yes. Other than getting comment actually from the ASTM saying, this is great, we want you to use this.
So I just want to point out procedurally, in case it informs anybody's judgment of how fast to push, I think there's sort of this perception that all rule updates have to be top to bottom rule updates, and that we'd have to wait a long time. It is quite possible if there's a desire to move fast on the rule or on the labeling once it's settled, if we want to reconcile things either with the full ASTM vote or with the Department of Health or with New England neighbors, it's quite possible to say, okay, just don't do anything at 2210 today or this update. Nothing prevents you reopening 2210 only, as soon as everybody knows. I do have to say, I get a little nervous for the same reasons the chair is talking about. We're supposed to really have a sort of express collaboration with VDH. They were distracted by a small public health event, and so I'm forgiving of their narrow bandwidth. But I just wanted to point out that it's not a forever thing, or it wouldn't mean waiting forever if you were to choose to defer action on 2210. And it is been a significant source of public comment from industry, just saying, whatever you do, don't do it twice.
Yeah, no, and I get that, and I'm with Pepper. I'm with you. I'm just trying to figure out where we're all going.
I honestly didn't think this would be that big of a deal. I think, we have more time. I've had at least one conversation with the Department of Health. I have provided them a veritable boatload of paper to read. I think we should at least give them time to digest what we've given them and provide us some comment. I think one of those ASTM standards is 85 pages long.
Tough reads. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Pepper. I just want to make sure I kind of get where we're anticipating going, if and maybe we don't know that yet with this 2.2.10 as we look to July.
Yeah. And Julia, like the only thing I'm talking about having a regional standard, it's not, I'm saying if we say that any product sold in Vermont has to have this label, then it may benefit I mean, who knows, but it may benefit us to have the exact same label as the sending states, people that are sending our products, or vice versa. If we're trying to send products into New York and they say, you have to have our health warning label, it'll benefit us if we already require that by rule.
Yeah, so I attend the labeling and packaging subcommittee of CANRA, and I'd be happy to figure out or ask that group how many of those states are adopting what and where they are. I hadn't thought about it in terms of regionally, only thought about it in terms of nationally. So we can certainly get more information.
Okay. And I looked them up. I looked up New York, Massachusetts, and Maine, and they're all relatively similar, except there's just, unique features of each. And it feels like, if we could move over the course of 5 years or 2 years or one, however long towards having a unified standard, I think that would be helpful. In case, a judge decides like, hey, listen, interstate commerce is fine. It's actually unconstitutional not to have interstate commerce. But I think the same, to me, question applies to the symbol, the THC symbol. Is that, I don't, that's not part of our rule amendment, is using the ASTM one, right?
I think we got feedback from ASTM on changing the symbol, because in the November meeting that we went over these initially, Mr. Chair, I think you suggested that we talk to the VDH about the symbol as well as the label.
Well, I did because the ASTM voted on their symbol when when the rules were still open, last March or whenever, and they did not want to do it then, just because they had to reopen their process if they were going to try and approve something new. So yeah, I mean, I think the same would apply to the label. So I think as you continue to have discussions with VDH, to the extent those discussions actually happen, I'd offer that you put the symbol on the table as well.
I think this is a good example of why we ask people not to start printing that rule label update. Because I didn't anticipate talking about this part of the rule update today, but
Although that happened the first time too. We had several iterations in the subcommittee that people were.
Or even like we accidentally took out 21 and under, right? So
we had two symbols at one point initially. We decided against that. Yeah. Best to wait before you print anything.
We should keep going. We can talk about this in July.
Yes.
My next comment was 2.2.19. So under A there, is this I can't quite remember in Rule 4, but I wonder where a failure to notify the board on something like this would fall. And I know like all those tiers in Rule 4, they're not, set in stone. We can look at the severity of the action and the surrounding circumstances, aggravating, mitigating circumstances. But is this like a minor violation, or would this be a major violation?
As the rule is written, I think it'd probably be a category 2 presumptive. I mean, it has potential to jeopardize public health and safety, but may not have done it. But because of the nature of the reporting, it'd be highly, highly context specific. So if you had, known carcinogen was the contaminant, and that's what adulterated the thing, that would easily be a category 1 issue. If it were a highly technical failure to report something that bumped up against the action limit, but without any real potential to hurt anybody, you could be in the much less severe categories.
Like moisture content that's over 13%, up to 15%.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Anything else on this section, anyone?
Nope.
Nope.
I had 2.3.9 about the contests. I mean, the bona fide contests for sampling. Is that is that defined anywhere? I mean, do we care about defining this somewhere? Is this an area where people could manipulate, or kind of, is this a loophole that people could exploit?
Yes. I think that part of leaving bona fide undefined would mean that the board would retain discretion to shake its head at things that appear to be, simple efforts to give away cannabis to and samples in ways that aren't actually related to a competition. So you might apply common sense questions like, is it advertised anywhere as a competition? Is there a panel of independent judges? That kind of thing. But yes, it certainly does open the possibility that somebody would, in bad faith, say I'm having a competition because they wanted to give samples that wouldn't otherwise be.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Obviously there was a competition in the last couple of months. I'm assuming part of this is a response to how to figure out how to maneuver through that without killing the event, essentially.
That's exactly it. And I think the Cannabis Cup came up and everybody said, well, we must have rule about that. And we did.
Yep. Okay. My next one is 2.6.3. Anyone have anything before that?
I guess I should quickly say that we did hear a comment, I think, on samples for medical patients at
We did, yeah.
recreational dispensaries. Not sure how I feel about that off the cuff, and might require some thought.
That feels like something we could potentially address in Rule 3 when we look at that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just bringing it up because I'm trying to remember all the comments we heard.
And there was commentary that has been passed around suggesting that the employee sample limit is too low. Well, people have said too high and too low.
Okay.
But I remember someone saying it's too low. We compared a little bit behind the scenes to what other states have done, and I think ours is high relatively.
I remember writing that portion, and I tried to follow what Massachusetts was doing, if I think about it correctly.
Mhm.
Okay, just recalling.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out those public comments because there have been comments on, I think, coming down.
Yeah, and I can appreciate how the medical program samples might be advantageous for certain medical patients at retail establishments. I'm trying to think of a way to address that. Maybe, whether it's suggestions to the legislature on the medical program that will do with these medical roundtables, or updating the medical program itself might mean that isn't truly unnecessary sampling to put out in Rule 2. But I'm just thinking out loud, and I'll have some more thoughts on that, I guess, before July 19th or whatever date that is. I just didn't want to forget about that comment.
Gabe, you could go up a little bit. I was at 2.6.3. So if I'm reading sub B correctly, yeah, the ones you just highlighted, these are more warning labels that go on specific products.
Yes.
Okay. And Julia, these are from the ASTM?
Yes, like I said before, these are from the draft. I think the final had different words, which we can absolutely change to. No problem with that at all. I didn't even think that suggestion was an option at this point, so I didn't make it.
Okay.
I'm trying to think about how I feel about the solid concentrate language. I mean, that cap is there to do what this warning label, I feel like, is attempting to accomplish. And it's kind of, what would we rather do? Have this in here now to show the legislature, maybe we'll get public comment on this. Hint, hint. If this language is in here now, we can tell the legislature, hey, we've already primed ourselves for that cap to be lifted, right? That's an argument for putting this language in now. The other flip side of it is I don't want to do anything with making solid concentrates harder to sell in this market than they already are because of the cap. And it's an additional warning label necessary.
Well, again, this is something that came from the ASTM draft, and is something similar is in their final, I believe, and also addresses a comment from the VMS that we've gotten regularly about.
I just see it. Yeah, I just see it on from two different perspectives on whether or not
Yeah,
it's helpful right now.
right. I agree. If it's in there, then absolutely. When we start having a conversation with the legislature about lifting a cap, if we do that again, and we can say, of course, we already are, ensuring that the public understands that these products are more potent. And then there's no delay, right? They don't have to wait for us to write an extra rule. It's already there. If the legislature chooses to lift the cap, but I agree with you. It can go either way.
Do we have a recommended serving size for concentrates?
In our pamphlet, there is a recommended, yes, there is a suggested way to start with concentrates. And I think it's like the tip of a pen.
Okay.
I know that like Colorado blew up a period to like
They did.
50 point
Yep.
font.
Yep. I don't think Nellie would know. I don't recall if we did that, but we did describe what a first dose would look like.
So I have a feeling that if the cap on solid concentrates gets lifted, that there is going to be a requirement that we develop either a point of sale flyer or a warning specific to concentrates for concentrate packaging. And so I would not, again, just want to have one warning label that people are printing, thousands of times and then have to change it potentially as soon as next year.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, that's kind of in the middle of what I was referring to, I guess, because that's assuming that the legislature would be comfortable with whatever language is currently in rule.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, I don't know.
Thinking out loud.
I have a feeling that they would not be. Just just in my experience, like I think that what they're going to want to see is that because the effects of consuming a high THC solid concentrate may differ from the effects of eating an edible. I think they're going to want to see a specific warning label for high THC solid concentrates, especially because Colorado, which initially allowed high THC, or still does, but there was a bill to almost get rid of them, and it got turned into, we'll make a specific warning label for them. So I think my inclination would be to wait for this directive so that we don't have people print, however many of these and then have to change it. But we can, happy to continue to receive comment on this and see how we feel about this in July. And I feel the same way about the vape, the vape additional instruction. I mean,
agreed.
anything more? Anyone want to talk about this anymore?
Nope.
Julie?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. So 2.6.4. I just wanted to read that one more time. Sorry. I think that's good. I think that's, I was just looking at that part C there. It's almost identical to the language in New Jersey. You know, like you said, Gabe, I know that, there's been conversation about limiting that to 5%, but I think 10% is probably sufficient, to protect the kind of, potential adverse effects that, have been noted by some of the experts in this, but, yeah, okay. 2.17.1, does anyone have anything before that?
Nope.
So this goes, of course, directly to our hemp tour, and we got a lot of comment about hemp derived products during our administrative rules hearings. I think one thing that we're asked by a number of hemp producers is that, just because something might be intoxicating by a Vermont standard, it's not intoxicating by, a Maine or, Texas or something. Is there a way that we can still continue to produce these, so that they're not illegal to produce in Vermont, not illegal to possess, but can be shipped out of state? And I don't know how people on the board feel about this. Is that, Gabe, I don't see that like a safe harbor provision in this.
No, has not been the safe harbor provision added to the draft at this point, but I have heard discussion and suggestions that adding a safe harbor provision similar to what was done in Colorado legislatively would be a solution, or could be a potential solution for manufacturers who wish to ship out of state and be protected. Right now, this language prohibits that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we heard we heard frequently from a lot of the hemp producers around the state is how much of their sales are from e-commerce and shipping to a number of different states. We're responsible for the products that are sold and bought in Vermont by Vermonters and those visiting the state of Vermont. If a different state has different, as we heard, a definition of what an intoxicating cannabis product is, I think a safe harbor provision, makes sense. And I think one of the questions that I've asked folks is, I think it's quite clear that FDA is going to act over the next couple of years, once they get the authority to do so through this farm bill, on a lot of these hemp derived THC products. Do folks want to rip the Band-Aid off now and not be able to sell? Because I think FDA, when they get the authority to regulate this, they're gonna do so restrictively. I think it's gonna either be what we have presented or even more restrictive. So the fear of out-of-state competition for a state that maybe has a 1.75 milligram of THC, limit and a 15-to-1 ratio, eventually those folks are going to have to abide by what FDA is telling them to do, which is probably more in line with what we're telling them to do. They can have a couple years of runway to kind of make that change themselves and have the safe harbor provision, or rip the Band-Aid off and not do it now. And folks said that they wanted a couple years to figure it out. So I think that makes sense.
Julie, how do you feel about that?
I agree with that. Yep.
Okay. So Gabe, I don't think a safe harbor provision would be that challenging to draft. I think a number of other states have them for these types of products. Are you willing to take a crack at that for the kind of publication of this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I guess I can take that as an instruction from the board to add what would probably could be done concisely as a 2173D that would, essentially define the protected activities in the same way that Colorado has. I realize some listeners might not know what we're talking about. If you can Google pretty easily Colorado Safe Harbor or something, and you'll see that what that state and a few others did to address this issue is to say, okay, you can't sell in our state, but you may manufacture and export to states where they've decided that sales should be lawful. So I'd be happy to give that a try, and probably just in the form of a new sub D to 2173. and bring that to you. Actually, we could publish that. That would mean that we wouldn't be able to put our update on the web for about 24, 48 hours, but that's probably okay.
Yeah, I think it's better to get to wait to. I mean, I think it's better to publish a little bit delayed, but have that provision in there so that people have a chance to see it. Because again, I think a lot of the controversy we heard over this emergency rule ended up not being about the substance, but about the kind of the actual language, and that it was confusing to people. So I think getting it out there and not having it kind of sprung on people on the 19th would be helpful. And I also don't think, and Julia, Kyle, I'm happy to be overruled on this, that we should have a safe harbor for Delta 8 and Delta 10 and the kind of synthetics, I think, or semi-synthetics, however you want to define them. I think it really should be related to products that maybe don't meet these presumptions, the 1.5 per serving, the 20-to-1 ratio.
Yep, that's how I'm thinking about it. And I think, one of the things I talked with Gabe about this, and just to fill you two in while we're all here, I think we heard from at least one person that has a retail store specific to hemp products. The way these safe harbor provisions often work is the producer can sell into other states, and this retailer has a lot of e-commerce in this area. If we just did a safe harbor from a producer relationship out of state, they wouldn't be captured by the safe harbor. And I think Colorado has a safe harbor provision for a retailer too.
Yes, they saw the same problem, and they created kind of safe harbor for related entities that would be in the chain to also deal.
Yeah, and again, just recognizing how much e-commerce in the hemp products space is quite prevalent as folks look for a Vermont craft CBD product, or I should say hemp product.
Great. And again, these presumptions don't apply to the presumptions in 2.17.2 don't apply to smokable hemp flowers. Is that right? Just to be clear, that was a question that we got a few times when we were out on our tour.
I think they do, in the sense that the smokable hemp flower to which concentrated THC had been artificially applied.
No,
Well,
but
yes.
I think people were confused with, and it's again, they're not typically subject to our regulations, how we define cannabis and we define cannabis product.
Mhm.
So cannabis product to them meant smokable flower, not smokable flower that had been sprayed back on with Delta 9 THC or anything like that. Just straight grown
straight flower.
And I just said, look, we define cannabis product and we define cannabis. This is about cannabis products, not about the flower. So I think that was, again, just getting used to how we define things in the CCD world versus how maybe BH2 agriculture defined things before us.
Yes, I think that's accurate. But to be clear, cannabis flower, hemp flower to which artificial THC concentrate was reapplied becomes a product. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Just without that aspect, it wouldn't be subject to these.
Thank you. I think that's exactly right.
All right. That's the last on this one, and I don't have anything for roll 4. Anyone else have anything on either 1, 2, or 4?
Just to clarify on 2.17, these are the rules for hemp products that fall into adult use. We haven't written any or forthcoming are rules around other hemp products. Is that right?
That's a good point. There's the meta hemp rule is out there for the next.
Okay.
Okay. So again, deferring action on these until next meeting, which means I think we can continue down our agenda. I'm sorry to everyone watching. Does anyone want to take a break? By the way, Bryn, are you okay?
Okay.
I'm good to just rock and roll.
Gabe?
Yep.
Do you need a mental health break? A leg stretch break?
I might, but you don't have to hold up on my account. I can go stretch and come back.
You're free now.
Well, do we want to take a vote on Rule 4?
That's an excellent question. Did you want, there is consensus, I believe, on Rule 4, and there's no notice issue on Rule 4. Nothing much has changed about it. Did you want as a body to approve Rule 4 for submission to LCAR right now, and then we'll be down to 1 and 2?
You know, I think that there's a good reason to do that, other than I didn't make that clarification when I announced it, just like, you know, before we started this process, that we were going to do something different for Rule 4. So just given that I don't think anything is going to change, except, you know, like, so it'll make it onto the LCAR calendar for next month as opposed to the month after. And there's probably a good reason that we have that in place sooner rather than later.
It would give us, it would codify our appellate process in a way that isn't done right now.
Okay. Well, then I'm fine with doing it. I mean, and we didn't receive any substantive comments on it today. Or I don't think throughout the process, frankly. I'm fine with that. Julie and Kyle, you comfortable with that?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Does someone have a motion to approve Rule 4 for submission to LCAR?
I move to approve the amendments to Cannabis Control Board Administrative Rule 4 as presented to us in this meeting. That's nice.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay. Great. So looking down the agenda for today, I think we're up to the recommendations, executive director report and staff recommendations.
Yep. So I'm going to start with the executive director report, and as the chair mentioned in his opening comments, I think that we will take a pause at the end of the report on the data to go into executive session to discuss staff recommendations on social equity status. Oh, hold on. Okay, so I'll try and scoot through these a little bit since we've been at this for a long time. It's actually a little bit of a shorter update than usual, just given where we are in the year. So it shouldn't take quite as long as it normally does. So I'll start with our public engagement updates since our last board meeting. As noted, there was quite a bit of public engagement on the hemp emergency rule and the language that you just reviewed in Rule 2 governing hemp-derived products. So that made up the bulk of our public engagement in the last month, the hemp listening tour between June 13th and June 19th. We also had a Q&A session on that emergency rule. And we also did a Q&A session early in the month on the medical program. So what will be coming up in the next couple of months is the medical program stakeholder group meetings. And as we are compiling a list of stakeholders that have reached out to us that would like to participate in this effort. And if you haven't reached out to us to indicate that you'd like to participate, you can email ccb.med@vermont.gov as the chair indicated in the opening remarks. So those meetings haven't been scheduled yet. They will be scheduled fairly soon. The schedule will be posted to the website with links to join. But if you would specifically like to hear about them, send an email and we will include you as a part of the stakeholder group. So as I do every month, I'm updating the public and the board on what guidance documents have been amended and updated and posted to the website. So since the last board meeting, we've put through updates to our fencing guidance, our mapping and GPS coordinates guidance, and also the local control commission guidance. So those are all new and updated to the website, so check them out. So I'll move to our licensing data for the adult use program. Starting out with our chart that demonstrates our average number of days from submission to approval based on license type. This chart over time just demonstrates that we're pretty consistently taking around 90 days to review cultivation applications, and less than that for every other license type. Employee ID cards are hovering around 58 days right now. So still real consistent data here. This is our new submission slide. So all of the new cannabis establishment applications that we've gotten in the month of June are here. And you can see they're broken out by status. So in the last month, we've gotten the majority of our new submissions have been from social equity applicants, 8 of them. 6 of them are from standard applicants and 3 from economic empowerment. And this obviously represents a significant decline since May, and that is due to the closure of our outdoor and mixed application windows. So you can see May, there was a huge increase in the number of new applications that we got, and that was due to, again, the fact that the board is closed the outdoor and mixed cultivation application window. So these numbers are only reflective of new license applications, not renewals. And so this is a summary of our renewal submissions. We've got 27 renewals that were submitted since the last board meeting. The majority of them, 75%, are standard applicants. About 11% are social equity applicants, and 15% are economic empowerment applicants. And the licensing team is working on developing some comparison data to demonstrate how many of our social equity applicants and all other status of applicants we are retaining. Okay, and this is just a summary of our new submissions by type of license. So we've got, about 6 cultivation, 5 retail, 4 manufacturer, and 1 wholesale application, new application as of this month. Here's our slide demonstrating the total number of issued licenses. So we are still around 56% of our issued licenses are to small cultivators. We're up to 58 retail licenses that we've issued at this point. And this seems like a good place to note that I haven't included for this month the total licensed canopy slide that I normally provide to you. We're going to hold that information to the later summer meetings when we have a more accurate assessment of how much space our licensed cultivators are utilizing this grow season. This slide shows our renewals since last month. So we've got 9 renewals in total that have been done. About half of them are cultivator renewals. And the other half, I think, are wholesalers and manufacturers that renewed off cycle. This is a summary of what else the licensing team is doing that's sort of happening outside of these board meetings. So we've gotten 24 amendments to issued licenses. And so far we've issued over 550 employee ID cards, and that includes renewals. So we've got 11 renewals that we've processed so far for the employees. Another synopsis of what licensing is doing outside of the board meetings. We've gotten around 450 new submissions in the last month since the last board meeting. So those are all things that the licensing team is processing. Here's our retail map of retail locations in the state. Looks pretty similar to how it did last month. You can see this is the zoom in on your area of density, which is Burlington. And we've got the full Burlington map on the left and the downtown map on your right, which shows how these issued retail licenses are dispersed in that area. As for other areas of density, this is your sort of chart that describes where else in the state you're seeing density of retail establishments. There's only, the change from last month is just a reduction. So there's one fewer, there's one less retail application in the queue for Burlington because we did have a withdrawal there. So no upward trends this month. So moving on to product registration, this is just the status of our product registration submissions by the numbers. So we've gotten just under 2,300 total product registration applications in the door. The majority of them, just under 2,000, have been registered. We've got 267 that are currently in submitted status, so those are awaiting review. 16 are currently under review. We've got 42 that have been resubmitted, so those are also awaiting our review. And then 340 are incomplete and need additional information from the licensee in order to register those. Here's the breakdown of product registration by the status they're in. It's just a different way of looking at the same thing. And then here we've got a breakdown of the product type for product registration. And this includes all of the products that have been submitted. So they are registered. This includes registered products and products that are still in other statuses. So you can see the about 75% is still flower. We've got 10% each for extracts and edibles. And then those smaller slivers of the pie are tinctures and topicals. I think we're at 2% for topicals right now, 3% for tinctures. So little micro changes in this chart over the months. Okay, I'll move on to our compliance data now. So starting with advertising, again, the slide shows a summary of our advertising submissions and the staff decisions on advertising since we started reviewing these submissions last November. You can see so at the top bullet there, we've gotten 113 submissions so far. And our approval and denial rate in the last few months has been about half and half. So that's improving over time. We've approved 57 now, denied 42. And again, the reasons for denial, the majority of the time we are denying because there's a failure on the part of the licensee to meet that requirement that they demonstrate a 15% threshold for the youth audience composition. And second to that is a failure to include the health warnings. And then we've got other reasons that fall below. So moving on to our inspections. So we've got 6 compliance agents that are out in the field. Just a brief correction there, something that was stated earlier. There's 6 of them, and they've done 97 total inspections this month. And there's the breakdown of license type. And investigations, we've since the last board meeting, we've undertaken 30 new investigations. And those investigations are about the list that you see there. 18 new complaints have been received since May 18th. And we've issued 2 notices of violation since the last board meeting. One for reasons of on-site consumption, and another for a violation of the emergency rule requirements. I'm going to chug along, and I'm sure anyone will interrupt me if there's any questions. So for the medical program, this is the initial slide that shows the sort of dramatic decrease over time. I did, for this meeting, include the data on 2023, even though we're only halfway through. So this reflects the significant drop just since 2022 over the last 6 months. Since 2022, we've had almost a 600 patient drop, and over 100 caregivers have dropped from the program just since the data that was collected in 2022. And you can see that here. Just dropping a little bit every month. So, perfect timing for the board to undertake the medical stakeholder program work to think about ways to improve access to the program. Okay, so with that, before I move on to the staff recommendations, it's my suggestion that we take a pause for executive session to discuss an applicant that has applied for social equity status.
Okay. Thanks for that, Brandon. It's really, I know that that's a lot of work to put that together every month, and it's a lot of work. It represents a lot of work too, done by the staff. So thank you to the staff as well for everything you're doing. Why don't we take a break? I have a feeling this one's going to require a little bit, just having read the recommendation, a little bit of time. I hate to say, but why don't we say 25 minutes? And we'll shoot for 4:30, and who knows, maybe we'll get done sooner. But why don't we, Nelly, if you're still there, I don't know if you had to run pick up your child.
I'm still here. I made arrangements.
Okay, thank you. Could you say 4:30? And again, we may get done sooner. I can't say for sure. But we'll shoot for 4:30.
Okay, that sounds good. Get that up.
Should we
Mr.
move?
Chair,
Oh,
are you
sorry.
suggesting that we move into executive session or take a break? I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Could I have a motion to move into executive session?
I move that the CCB go into executive session to consider confidential attorney-client communications made for the purposes of providing professional legal services to the body, and that the executive session is required because premature general public knowledge regarding such communications would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage. I further move that the board invite Susanna Davis, Executive Director, and Jay Green, Racial Equity Research and Policy Analyst from the Office of Racial Equity for the state of Vermont, into executive session.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
To
All right. Are we all ready to keep going?
Just give me 1 second. I have to get Ray set up here. So hang on 1 second. All right, I'm going to hand the reins over to Ray, and we are still recording.
Okay. So we're out of executive session. Just for the record, it's 4:42 p.m. on
Oh, I'm in.
June 26th, 2023. And we, I think, are ready to look at the staff recommendations.
Yep. Okay, so here's our list for this month on staff recommendations for social equity status. So we've got 5 recommendations for social equity status approval this month. Submission number 3643. Submission number, oh, this looks like an incorrect submission number. I'm going to guess that it's submission number 1345. And we will get that corrected. Submission number 3351, submission number 4452, and submission number 3881. We will get a correction on that second submission number, which looks just one digit too long. So that is our list of applicants that have met the criteria for a social equity business applicant or social equity individual applicant as required by board rule for access to the social equity program. And I've just gotten confirmation that it's 1345. The second submission number is 1345, not 21345. Thank you, Ray. Okay, and then the next set of recommendations is staff recommendations for licensure. So the businesses on the following pages have all demonstrated compliance with the requirements for their license that are contained in board rule and in statute. And I'm not going to read the list to you because it is long. And I don't even remember exactly how long it is, but it's 3 pages long. So here's your list. 1, 2, 3 pages of businesses that have demonstrated their appropriateness for licensure. That is the list. We will have it published on the website this evening. And the last page is our staff recommendations for license renewal. And that's another long one. So I'm not going to read those either. But given that it's the end of a very long board meeting, I don't think anyone will mind that I'm not reading.
I mind.
Because I do. You're the only one that minds.
All right, I'm just kidding. Okay, all right. So these, for those who joined by the phone, will be posted to our website. I think Brent said hopefully this evening, if not tomorrow. So you'll be able to see everyone that got approved. And is there a motion to approve the staff recommendations for social equity and licensure?
I move to approve the staff recommendations made to us in this meeting.
A second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
Nope.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you for that, Bryn. Thanks, Gabe, for your help. Thanks to the whole licensing team and compliance team. And why don't we move to public comment? So I know it's been a long day, but if you'd like to make a public comment, you join via the link, please raise your virtual hand. I can call on you in the order that you raise them, and then we'll shift to folks that join via the phone.
Bobby Berg. I'm going to unmute you in a second. Here we go.
Hi, I'll spare y'all more on the 2.24 talk as you'll be getting some written thoughts on that soon enough. I just wanted to briefly make a suggestion for product registration, and that is to allow licensees to update them while they are in submission. I understand that, applications are considered in the order they're approved. I think it would probably be pretty easy to automate a system that would, re-queue anything that's edited so it doesn't like jump queue or anything. I'm personally in a situation right now where I've had a pending registration for like 4 months, I think, and I noticed something wrong with it on the resubmission, and I can't edit the resubmitted thing until it is reviewed. So, by the time this product gets to the shelves, it's going to be like 6-7 months, Anyways, figured that might streamline things. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Bobby. Tito?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So thank you so much to everybody who worked on that vape tax. It's so incredible that actually happened. So thank you. And quickly, definitely would love to see the removal of the cessation of operations escrow, and also agree with Pepper about not dictating low THC products or guidance or however that was working. Thank you. Hope you have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, Tito. Anyone else who joined via the link, just raise your virtual hand, and if you joined by phone and would like to comment, you can hit *6 to unmute your phone. Just give it one last minute here.
I don't see anybody coming off mute that's on the phone, Pepper, but
Okay.
one. Oh, maybe.
Phone number ending
Nobody
in
did.
7141. If you join by phone and your number ends in 7141, we just saw that you unmuted. If you'd like to make a comment, now's the time.
No, we were watching online and we lost everything and I was
Gotcha.
trying to figure out how the votes went.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we approved all of the licenses that were up that were recommended to us.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. And I know there's a number of people that joined by the phone. We'll make sure that list is posted, so you all can see who was approved.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Going once, twice. All right, I'll close the public comment window and just want to thank everyone for sticking it out, both on the CCB side and on the kind of participant side. We'll see you again July 19th, and I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.